Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is another video. It's Emmanuel. This one, coming to you. I'm making this video in continuation of the previous video. In which I spoke about the ether and talking about the basic form in which ether exists. So now we are going to be proceeding from that, because in the previous video we spoke about the forces which are in the ether, which make up the charges. And we said these charges make up something called matter points. So this matter points, as we have it, there is something that goes on as it being the first particle, as it being the first conjugate that makes up what we call mass of a body and charge value of a body. There is a way and a process in which it moves to generate something we call a microscopic matter, or larger bodies, from that which is very minute. And with this now, I'm going to be showing you the diagram. You shall be seeing in which here we have a dot. This is a dot, also known as zero dimension. A line composing of two dots, which is two dots, or a line which is one dimension. A shape, which is like any shape you see, which is also two-dimensional, as it's having both length and breadth. Now, a three-dimensional object, or an object which is three-dimensional, length, breadth, and height. The length, the breadth, and the height. So now, one thing I want us to note here is that when this matter point has been formed from a positive charge joined to a negative charge, as they are attracted together, there is something called a cycle which happens as they build up. It starts as that first point, which is the particle, which is that dot, zero dimension, then becomes a line by continuous elongation. So as you have a positive and a negative attached to each other, as you can see from this diagram here, a positive and a negative, there is another positive attached to the next negative, another negative. So these dots now, which was just one single matter point, now becomes a straight line, a line which is being formed, and that line keeps going, but it does not move out to infinity. Rather, it moves for a certain period and begins to come back to its point of origin, like you see here in a cycle. So it moves and it returns back to its point of origin when forming a shape. It moves just once, it makes that cycle just once, and it's going to form a shape. But when it's going to form a object, a 3D object, as it has moved once, instead of coming to an end, it overlaps, continues to overlap like this. So instead of ending once, it begins to overlap, and it keeps moving. Keeps moving. That's how it goes till it ends and it finishes. So from the outer part of the body, it moves in cycles, and it moves again, keeps going even to the internal part of the object. So it completely closes up the whole structure. Everything that is hollow is completely filled up with particles or matter. So you have this process forming from the micro scale, which is the matter point, to the protons, electrons, and neutrons. These protons, electrons, and neutrons are formed through this process. Even the larger bodies, when the atoms are formed, the atoms follow the same principle as to form the molecules. The molecules take the same process as to form larger bodies of grains, and as you can see them, till they compile, they all make use of this process. So it's not the way people think that, chunks of matter just come from different and random points in the body, then begin from all sides, then begins to grow. No, nature has a process in which it does this thing. This is the principle. Everything moves in cycles, which is sort of like a frequency oscillation sort of form of a wave. They are taking the same process of that of the wave, how they move, interact with up and down, start to finish, back to the start. That's what they keep doing. So as they are moving, they are making both length, breadth, and height. The length, the breadth, and the height they make use of each and every process in it is being formed. So now, moving on from there, there's something I like to address, and which is the way in which the world of the protons, the electrons, and the neutrons, how they are being formed. Because if you look at their order of arrangement, you have the protons and the neutrons at the center, and you have the electrons oscillating, they are revolving around them. Now, if you look at the models of the atom, which we have in our conventional physics or physics textbook, what will you see there? They make it clear to you that these electrons revolve around. But in Niels Bohr's model, he was looking at them more like they are particles, the proton and the electrons, same as the neutrons, that these things are particles, though the proton and the neutrons remain in the nucleus. Erwin Schrödinger brought his own model, which is the wave model, saying that these subatomic particles are actually waves and that they oscillate. Looking at both their two definitions, the idea is correct, they do match, but the way in which Bohr claimed his own is actually right in a sense, but Schrödinger has more of grounds in terms of who was more correct. Because while in that realm, the wave properties are far more dominant and particle properties are very little. And like we said in the previous video, as these particles are building up, there's an extent to which the particle properties become so visible where they can dominate and the wave properties begin to diminish. But at that level, it is still so minute. The wave properties are much more dominant, because why? Even the mass, the charge value, these things are very, very small in value. They are not large like we think. They are not as large as that. So, and because of these two concepts are still very small at that level, they will take more of wave properties and not particle properties. They need to come to the scale of very large. So, moving on now, there's another thing which I like to emphasize or make clear to us, which is a puzzle. Because if we look at the atom, they will tell us that the protons are positively charged, as the proton is positively charged, the electron are negatively charged. What would they tell us? That the protons, the reason why they can hold each other together, because according to the law of electric fields, like charges are not meant to be able to stay together. So the expectation is, since one proton and another proton are inside the nucleus, the expectation is that they should repel. But the electrons were accepted, because why? You have the energy levels, they are not perfectly together, and the electron is staying on its own. But the proton remained a mystery, and what they used to account for this is by saying, there is a strong force that exists, as the standard model physicists or the scientists today that came up with standard model claimed that there is something called a strong force that counteracts the electromagnetic force that is trying to tear them up. But this is not so, because why? If you look at the way this proton is, just a second. This is an electron. If you can see, all the negative charges of the ether are surrounded by its outermost surface, but the positive charges are at the center. This is the way an electron exists, and this is the concept of a magnetic field. If you check my book, Ether and Time in Electromagnetism, I made emphasis on the way magnetic fields are when I was showing the electromagnetism, the way they exist, why you have positive charges and you have negative charges is this. So the proton, you can see, is the reverse. It has the positive charges at the surface, negative charges at the center. So what is really happening is that this is the way normally they attract each other. The positive pulls the negative of the electron. The positive charges pull the negative charges of the electron, while the positive charge of the electron pull the negative charges of the proton. So this now happening, the reason why the protons can actually stay inside the atom together, two or more protons can stay inside the nucleus of an atom together, is because the neutrons are not fixed like this. This is the way the neutrons exist. This is the way the neutron exists. More like Thomson's model of the atom, where you have a positive charge next to a negative charge. This is the way the neutrons exist. They carry both charges, and it's because of this, that's why they carry no charge. Because why? Both the positive is directly next to their negative charges. Unlike the proton and electron, where you can see a potential generated inside. And it's because of these magnetic fields they possess. That is why they have their individual charges, whereby a proton is positive and an electron is negative. But a neutron, because of the way they exist, it does not have any charge. So now looking at this, the reason why this is happening is because the proton takes the extra negative charges. Each proton inside the nucleus takes the extra negative charges of the neutron, and they attract them to each other. So thereby, instead of repelling the positive charges that are coming to the proton now, as there are more negative charges inside now, the proton's force weakens within each and every proton. Each and every proton acting on each other begins to weaken because they are taking negative charges from the neutron that is existing there with them. So they take it, they keep eating from it, taking each and every one. So, and these protons now, these positive charges, they move on to the electrons. They go and stay there with them. So thereby being able to hold it. So why this process is as to ensure that as much as the protons are able to hold the electrons in their orbits, the protons themselves can still be compacted and stay inside the nucleus without being repelled from each other. So this totally shatters the idea of a strong force. Because why? It is quite clear that both the proton, neutron, and electrons, the neutron is that additional energy given to them. And this energy comprises of charges, both positive and negative, of the ether. And in the previous video, we made it very clear about this ether. So now, this order of arrangement, because sometimes the positive sometimes the proton could take more of the positive, while the electron will take more of the negative. But like we said, the stability, these things are not stable. As we see, this positive and negative liking onto the solar system. I will talk about that in another video. These positive charges and negative charges, they are not stable. I have it in my book, which you can check, The Grand Design of Gravity. It's there. I make it clear of all these things in the solar system, liking onto the protons and electron and neutron of the subatomic world. The order of arrangement is the same between the proton and electron as the sun is to the planets. They have the same order of arrangement, and it is not stable. There is a constant random motion between the negative charges and the positive charges. You understand? But just that for the planet, you have positive atoms and you have negative atoms. But here we are talking about charges. And this concept is what has been given up their concept of mass value and charge value. So there is no strange thing. And many of the phenomena we see in the atom, such as radiation, if you look at the alpha, beta, and gamma, they all came from this. Because why? These things, as they move, they make friction with ether. So this neutron is actually coming from, if you check my work on waves and color, this neutron is actually the primary source. As it creates friction with the ether, it generates the gamma rays, and it's because of the way this thing exists. As it exists like this, it is not carrying charge. That's why its residual parts or the components which is gotten from it, the gamma ray, does not carry any charge. And if you look at the alpha came from the proton, while the beta came from the electron. So if you check their respective property, you will notice, liking onto it, that the proton is actually more heavy than the electron. And if you look at the beta is actually lighter than the alpha. Same relationship that these things have. But if you look at the neutron, we say the neutron is very, very massive, and the gamma carries no mass. And the gamma will carry no mass truly, because why? The positive and negative are not together like that. They are together like that, yes, but they are not compact, they are not tightly fixed. They are more of moving energy than the neutron, as they are being radiated away. That's why the gamma possesses no mass. It's a radiation, but although the gamma actually does have mass, it's just very minute. It does have mass, because if you look at Einstein's theory, Einstein was trying to make it clear that all electromagnetic waves carry no mass, that even light carries no mass. That's a lie. They all carry mass. There's nothing that exists that does not have mass. The mass is just very minute or negligible because of how small it is in fraction. So all these things do carry mass, and they are residual. The radioactive rays gotten, they all carry mass too. So from this now, we are able to see how these processes take place and why physics, this is the proper way physics ought to have been advancing since the 1930s. So all the and if you look at another phenomena which will even involve light, if you notice, they will tell you light travels in straight lines, as you can see here. These straight lines, which Newton was noting, Fraunhofer noticed. All these straight lines which constitutes of light is because of these matter points, these lines of matter points. So as they keep going, they come and return, go back. That is this line that you are seeing. But it's thought to be a distinction. It's not a distinction. That these are just separate lines that carry information, but they are not. So we'll be making more videos, but that will be all for now. So please like, comment, subscribe, and if you have any other thing, my information is in the link below. You can check my books on Amazon to read them up, and if you have any questions, you can talk with me personally through my email or my WhatsApp. The information is there. So please, I am pleading that please help me promote this channel, and also help me patronize by buying my books online. They are cheap, like I said, within $3 to $5. It's not too expensive. So I'm doing this work as to enlighten many, so that why they can understand that there is no need for the complex graviton particle, Higgs boson, and one particle. Because even many of these principles, if you look at it, you have Pauli's exclusion principle, and there wasn't need for much of these models of saying there is an upspin, downspin, and none of these things are required. Even the string theory saying there are vibrations, no, everything falls back on the foundation and premises of an ether. So thank you so much for your time. See you in the next video.